Imagine you're just, sitting on your couch, casually scrolling through Google Maps.
Like we all do.
Right. You're just trying to find a good spot to pitch a tent for the weekend.
Yes.
So you're scanning the topography of the Quebec wilderness, and suddenly you stumble across a 390-million-year-old cosmic scar on the Earth's crust.
Just hiding there.
Exactly. A 25-kilometer-wide circular depression just hiding in plain sight. Welcome to your daily news brief deep dive for July 19th, 2026. Today, we are looking at the invisible architecture of our world. We're tracking this specific hidden thread running through today's top global and Indian headlines.
And that thread is basically the concept of boundaries.
Yes, boundaries. We walk around assuming the lines drawn on maps or, in legal codes or international relations are permanent, like they're carved into the universe itself.
Right, but if you look closely at the mechanics of today's world, you see individuals, entire industries, and nations actively testing those boundaries. They're pushing them, erasing them, or in some cases discovering they were completely arbitrary all along.
Which brings us right back to that couch in Canada.
Yeah, so the camper's name is Joel Lapointe. And he didn't just scroll past this strange circular anomaly on his screen. He actually reached out to experts.
Which is amazing.
It really is. And that single act of curiosity catalyzed a major expedition in 2025. You had Gordon Osinski, who is a planetary geology professor, and Jérôme Gatacheka, a French rock specialist. They organized a team to head roughly 100 kilometers north of a town called Magpie to investigate this thing.
And I want to emphasize the sheer physical boundary they had to cross just to reach this place. I mean, the terrain in this part of Quebec is so aggressively dense with vegetation that their small plane couldn't even reach the shoreline of the lake inside the crater.
Oh, it was brutal.
Yeah, they had to land the plane in the water like 50 meters out. So you have these top-tier scientists jumping into freezing water, wading through 50 meters, carrying all this highly sensitive, heavy scientific gear.
Just to hack their way into the bush for 5 days of field research?
Right. But the physical toll paid off, because what they found completely rewrote the geological map of the region. They discovered these towering cliffs composed of impact melt rock.
Let's unpack the actual physics of that term for a second, because the mechanism behind it is mind-bending.
Yeah, please do.
So when a high-velocity meteor strikes the Earth, we intuitively think of it like, I don't know, a rock hitting sand.
Right, just pushing dirt out of the way to make a hole.
Exactly. But the kinetic energy involved in a cosmic impact is so unimaginably immense that the friction instantly converts into heat. It literally flash vaporizes and liquefies massive volumes of the Earth's solid crust.
Wow.
And over thousands of years, that liquid rock cools and recrystallizes into this distinct geological signature. They also found shatter cones in the bedrock there.
Those are the fan-shaped fracture patterns.
Precisely.
Yeah.
They are the ultimate geological fingerprint of a meteor impact. You cannot create a shatter cone through normal tectonic shifting or, volcanic activity.
It has to be a meteor.
Yeah. They only form when a supersonic shockwave from a cosmic collision travels through solid rock, fracturing it in this very specific conical pattern.
It's just astounding. I mean, finding a 390-million-year-old crater on your phone. And this massive geological boundary has now been officially recognized and named Uhukatik.
Right, which was a name chosen in consultation with the Innu Council of Riqonitshit, honoring the indigenous community whose ancestral lands it actually sits upon.
We're looking at a profound collapse of the boundary between the amateur and the expert here. A camper looking down at Earth's ancient crust fundamentally advanced our scientific reality.
It's incredible, but, if we shift our focus from looking down at the crust to looking up at the atmosphere, we're seeing an entirely different kind of boundary being shattered by private enterprise right here in India.
Oh, absolutely. We are talking about Skyroot Aerospace and their monumental success with Mission Agaman.
This is huge.
It really is. So on Saturday, at 0635 GMT, their Vikram-1 rocket launched from the Satish Dhawan Space Center. And in exactly 15 minutes, it successfully placed its payload into a 450-kilometer orbit.
To understand the gravity of this, no pun intended, we have to look at the structural boundary that just fell.
Right.
For decades, the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, held this absolute state-backed monopoly on orbital mechanics. With Vikram-1, India officially becomes only the third nation on Earth to achieve orbital launch capability entirely through a private company.
And the technology driving this vehicle is what really caught my eye. So the Vikram-1 is a 22-meter-tall machine capable of carrying a 350-kilogram payload. It relies on 3 solid fuel stages. But the real game changer is the liquid fuel engine.
The orbital adjustment module.
Exactly, because it's powered by a 3D printed engine. And I want to dig into why that specific manufacturing choice is so revolutionary compared to how we used to build rockets.
Well, traditionally, manufacturing a rocket engine is a metallurgical nightmare.
I can imagine.
Yeah, you're dealing with complex casting, thousands of individual parts, intricate brazing, welding. It takes months of labor to produce just one engine.
Right.
But by utilizing 3D printing or additive manufacturing, Skyroot can print the combustion chamber, the cooling channels, the fuel injectors, all as a single continuous piece of specialized alloy.
Meaning, if a test firing fails on a Tuesday, you don't have to scrap millions of dollars in custom tooling. You just adjust the CAD file on a computer and literally print a brand new, updated iteration by Thursday.
Exactly. That rapid iteration is how a private startup, which, by the way, recently became India's first space sector company to hit a $1 billion valuation, can suddenly replicate the avionics that used to require the GDP of an entire nation-state.
The economic implications are massive here. The strategic goal is to grow India's share of the global space economy from its current $8 billion footprint to $44 billion by 2033.
It's a huge leap.
It is. Skyroot is effectively expanding the borders of the Indian economy into low Earth orbit, positioning the country to capture a massive slice of the global small satellite launch market.
But, while the space sector is expanding India's borders vertically, the traditional economy is aggressively redrawing its economic boundaries horizontally, right here on the ground.
We are seeing that play out with the India-UK Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or CETA, which just went into effect on July 15th.
Yeah, this is a structural rewiring of international commerce.
The raw projections from the Bank of Baroda really paint a stark picture. Indian exports to the UK are projected to jump from $13.5 billion in FY26 to an estimated $24.2 billion by FY31.
Wow.
And the mechanism driving this massive leap is the elimination of tariffs on 99% of India's outbound goods.
Let's look at how that actually changes the reality on a factory floor, specifically in the textile sector. So previously, Indian textiles faced a 12% tariff when entering the UK market. If a British buyer was choosing between a shipment of shirts from Dhaka, Bangladesh, and Mumbai, India, that 12% import tax often made the Indian garments uncompetitive.
Because Bangladesh already had better trade terms.
Exactly. But by dropping that tariff to absolute zero, India suddenly achieves trade parity with countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan.
So it completely changes the calculus for the buyer. Companies instantly become 12% more attractive on a global spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And we are seeing similar transformations across the board, right?
Absolutely.
Telecom equipment exports are projected to surge to over $3.5 billion, which fundamentally alters the growth trajectory for domestic manufacturers like Dixon Technologies and Surma SGS. Leather goods could hit $900 million. Gems, pharmaceuticals, they all benefit from this vanished boundary.
But there is a catch.
Right. I noticed something critical in the fine print. India isn't just embracing radical free trade here. They are maintaining a highly calibrated protectionist boundary around specific domestic sectors.
Yeah. The CETA agreement carefully shields sensitive areas like dairy, agriculture, and electric vehicles. The overarching strategy is to protect micro, small, and medium enterprises, the MSME sector, from being overwhelmed by a sudden influx of established UK imports.
I have to challenge this calibrated approach, though.
Go for it.
If you eliminate tariffs and open the export floodgates for the big players, but build a protectionist wall around the smaller domestic ones, doesn't that just breed complacency? I mean, does shielding MSMEs from global competition prevent them from innovating while just padding the profit margins of massive export conglomerates?
It's a very valid critique of protectionism. In the immediate term, yeah, it does insulate domestic companies from the harsh realities of global efficiency.
Right.
However, the historical counterargument is the compliance filter effect. When your top-tier domestic sectors gain duty-free access to a highly regulated, sophisticated market like the UK, they are forced to meet incredibly stringent standards for quality control, environmental compliance, and labor practices.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Eventually, those rigorous standards inevitably filter down through the domestic supply chain, forcing the shielded MSMEs to level up just to supply their own local exporters.
So the boundary of baseline quality is artificially pulled upward by the gravity of the export market.
Exactly.
Speaking of artificially imposed boundaries and timelines, While the national economy is enjoying a newly expanded horizon, the Indian sports media recently attempted to enforce a very strict, arbitrary boundary on the career of a beloved cricket legend.
Oh, you're talking about the intense speculation surrounding Rohit Sharma's retirement.
Right. The media cycle was absolutely saturated with rumors that the team management was preparing to forcibly phase Rohit Sharma out of ODI cricket following the series against England.
It was everywhere.
It really was. The BCCI, through Secretary Devajit Saikia, eventually released a firm statement rejecting the rumors entirely, confirming he remains an integral part of the ODI setup.
But the real insight here isn't the press release.
No, it rarely is.
Right, it's the optics the team used to kill the narrative. Ahead of the series deciding third ODI at Lord's, Rohit attended an optional practice session. But the brilliance was in the visual choreography of it all. Star Sports captured a video of Rohit standing on the famous Lord's balcony, sharing a very relaxed, genuine laugh with head coach Gautam Gambhir and batting coach Sitanshu Kotak.
This is a fascinating study in modern media mechanics.
Mm.
I mean, why does a silent 5-second video of three guys laughing hold more weight than a 500-word official statement?
Because of how our brains process information. Text requires engagement with our critical faculties, right? We read a press release and immediately search for corporate spin or hidden agendas.
We're skeptical by default.
Exactly. Visuals, however, largely bypass those critical filters. When we see a candid, pureful interaction, it registers subconsciously as authentic truth. In 2026, controlling the boundary of a narrative doesn't always require a press conference. A single, strategically deployed visual of unity instantly neutralizes weeks of intense manufactured speculation.
A smile on a balcony communicates everything perfectly by just exploiting our psychological wiring.
Yeah, beautifully put.
But while a smile avoids crossing any lines, the actual words we speak in public can cross a very specific legal boundary. Which brings us to a highly nuanced ruling from the Supreme Court of India regarding what the state considers acceptable speech.
This case involves a 70-year-old man from Tamil Nadu named Mani. Back in 2017, during a long-standing land dispute, he engaged in an altercation where he used severe, vulgar language and ultimately attacked the complainant with a billhook.
Okay, now, setting the physical violence aside, which he was obviously rightfully convicted for, the Supreme Court focused intensely on the language he used. They analyzed it under Section 294B of the Indian Penal Code, which governs obscenity.
Right. And Justices Sanjay Carroll and Vipul M. Pancholi drew a very sharp, distinct line in the sand here. They ruled that merely using swear words, profanities, or vulgar expletives in a public space does not automatically trigger the legal definition of obscenity.
I read this ruling and got stuck on the mechanism of the law here.
Yeah.
I mean, if I curse someone out in public, I'm undeniably being vulgar. But the court says that's not legally obscene. So where is the actual legal tripwire?
Well, the court established that to cross the boundary into criminal obscenity, the language must satisfy very specific criteria. The words must be lascivious, they must appeal to prurient interests, and they must possess a clear tendency to deprave or corrupt impressionable minds.
That's a high bar.
It is. Furthermore, the prosecution must prove that the utterance actively caused profound annoyance to others in or near that public space.
Okay, the way I'm processing this is through an analogy.
Let's hear it.
Vulgarity is essentially just social bad manners. It's like walking into someone's house and leaving muddy footprints on their expensive rug.
Right, okay.
It's distasteful, it's uncivil, but it's not a crime against the state. Obscenity, however, is a highly specific legal lock. And to open that lock and face criminal liability, you need highly specific keys. The words must be lascivious, prurient, and corrupting.
That analogy perfectly captures the court's intent. They are establishing a firewall between what society finds distasteful and what the state actually has the power to punish. Considering Mani's age and the context of the underlying land dispute, they modified his sentence to imprisonment till the rising of the court and a 50,000 rupee fine.
It is the judiciary explicitly limiting its own boundaries, refusing to police mere incivility.
Exactly.
But, you know, when we transition from a singular legal dispute to thousands of citizens expressing deep systemic dissatisfaction, we see the boundaries of state tolerance being aggressively tested. Right now in Delhi, citizens are intentionally pushing the limits of what the government can ignore.
Now, before we dive into this, looking at the highly polarized environment currently unfolding at Jantar Mantar, we need to state clearly that our goal today is to examine the mechanics of the protest itself.
Yes, absolutely. Just to be clear for everyone listening, we are maintaining strict neutrality here. We are merely reporting the claims from the sources on the ground without taking any political side.
Right. We are objectively unpacking the claims as they stand.
So the situation has escalated significantly.
Mm-hmm.
Activist Anna Hazar is publicly demanding the central government initiate immediate dialogue with educationist Sonam Wangchuk.
And Wangchuk, alongside activists from ASA, has reached the 21st day of an indefinite hunger strike.
The catalyst for this severe action is the ongoing NEET paper leak scandal. The protesting coalition, known as the Cockroach Janta Party, or CJP, is demanding the immediate resignation of Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan.
They are citing profound irregularities in the national examination system and pointing to the tragic student deaths linked to the mounting stress and controversy surrounding it.
The mechanics of a hunger strike are, they're fascinating and terrifying. It is essentially a biological countdown timer. The protester intentionally pushes the physical boundaries of their own human body to the point of failure, just to force a political crisis and test the empathetic boundaries of a government.
And that physical boundary was breached when Delhi police forcefully moved Wangchuk to Safdarjung Hospital. The police cited strict adherence to expert medical advice and court orders, arguing the intervention was necessary to save his life as his health rapidly deteriorated.
But the political opposition immediately weaponized that intervention. Rajya Sabha MP Kapil Sibal issued a severe critique of Prime Minister Modi. And what's critical here is how Sibal structured his argument.
He didn't just condemn the police action, did he?
No, he invoked the past. He explicitly contrasted the government's current deployment of police against protesting youth with how Prime Minister Modi, back in 2011, fiercely defended the right to protest during Anna Hazar's Lokpal movement.
It's a very calculated political chess move. Sibal is taking the prime minister's own historical rhetoric regarding democratic freedom and using it as a mirror against the state's current actions.
Exactly. And Sibal's allegations go far beyond the immediate protest. He accused the government of ignoring engineered paper leaks since 2017 to benefit specific factions. He even cited allegations of voter list tampering by the Election Commission, framing a broader narrative that the state refuses to engage in dialogue because it relies on systemic manipulation to retain power. He basically declared that a government refusing to engage its youth has forfeited its right to govern, calling for a new battle for freedom.
This is the architecture of a political narrative happening in real time. The opposition is framing the government's refusal to negotiate as proof of democratic backsliding.
Yeah.
It is a sheer battle of political wills. It's testing exactly how far a modern state can go without engaging its citizens and simultaneously testing how much physical and legal risk protesters are willing to endure to force that engagement.
Domestic protests test the elasticity of political boundaries. They bend, they stretch, they fracture. But when we look at the international stage, when geopolitical boundaries are deliberately crossed, the result is kinetic, irreversible escalation.
And maintaining that same objective lens we just used, we have to look at the very heavy reality of fresh U.S. airstrikes against Iran, authorized by President Donald Trump.
The catalyst for this kinetic response occurred in Jordan. According to U.S. Central Command, C&E Khan Iranian ballistic missile and drone attacks resulted in the deaths of 2 American service members.
A third service member remains missing in action, and 4 others sustained injuries.
So the threshold for lethal force was crossed. In rapid response, the U.S. military launched targeted airstrikes against facilities operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC.
CTCOM explicitly stated that the strategic objective here is to degrade Iran's operational capacity to threaten commercial shipping lanes, specifically through the vital Strait of Hormuz, where Iran-linked factions have been systematically disrupting global maritime traffic.
I have to push back on the underlying strategy here, though. I mean, we see this pattern repeatedly. Are these retaliatory strikes genuinely degrading the IRGC's long-term capabilities, or does this just lock both nations into a perpetual automated cycle of deterrence?
It's a fair question.
A drone strikes a base, a bomber hits a facility, the boundaries cross back and forth, and the underlying conflict is never actually resolved.
You're highlighting the central paradox of modern deterrence theory, which relies really heavily on game theory. Think of it as an escalation ladder.
Okay.
The U.S. is attempting a highly volatile balancing act. The Strait of Hormuz is a massive artery for the global economy. If international shipping is choked off, the economic fallout is catastrophic. Therefore, the U.S. feels compelled to strike hard enough to impose unacceptable costs on the IRGC to protect those waters.
But the cost of imposing those costs is American lives.
Exactly. The U.S. leadership must respond to the deaths of its personnel, but they are constantly calculating the limits of the escalation ladder. Like, how severely can you bomb an adversary's infrastructure to degrade their capabilities while staying just 1 millimeter below the threshold that triggers an all-out, uncontainable regional war?
It's terrifying.
It is. It is a tit-for-tat cycle where the boundaries of conflict are constantly shifting, and one miscalculation by either side leads to total destabilization in the Middle East.
It truly exposes how fragile the lines keeping the world in order actually are. Well, we've covered an immense amount of ground today on this deep dive.
We really have.
We started with the 390-million-year-old cosmic impact hiding in the dense Canadian brush and watched private startups redefine the economics of space with 3D printed engines. We analyzed how a vanishing 12% tariff reshapes global textile manufacturing, how the Supreme Court separates bad manners from criminal obscenity, and confronted the incredibly heavy realities of political hunger strikes and geopolitical missile exchanges.
And, to tie all of these shifting boundaries together, I want to leave you with a final thought. Let's bring it right back to Joel LaPointe, our camper looking at Google Maps.
Right.
We navigate our daily routines with a subconscious assumption that the heavy lifting of discovery is already finished. We assume the maps are finalized, the rules of physics and economics are set, and that anything left to be found requires a PhD and a billion-dollar laboratory.
It's the comforting illusion of a completed world.
Exactly. But if a guy casually zooming in on his phone to plan a camping trip can uncover a 25-kilometer-wide ancient meteor crater that the entire scientific establishment missed, what invisible boundaries are sitting quietly in your own daily view? What unexpected solutions, rigid rules, or hidden discoveries are hiding in plain sight of your industry or your own life, just waiting for you to stop scrolling and finally zoom in a little closer?
That is the perfect question to sit with today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking closely at the maps in your own life, keep questioning the boundaries around you, and we'll see you next time.